Alabama seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm a firm believer when the President of the United States, being Republican or Democrat, does well, we as America, we benefit the most. Unfortunately, President Biden's performance during his first year in office has been absolutely terrible, and virtually all Americans are suffering because of his failure. There's so much about this president that actually frustrates me. He left behind Americans in Afghanistan, and he has completely refused to secure our southern border. Meanwhile, he's pushing for hardworking Americans he's punishing hardworking Americans by imposing illegal vaccines on them. All across America, businesses are struggling to keep their doors open and their shelves stocked, but President Biden has done nothing to fix these issues. I'm urging President Biden to show and work on leadership for a change. The American people deserve much, much more and much better than what they're receiving today. And Madam Speaker, I yield my time back. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Mississippi seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to remind the American people that our national security is still under attack at the U.S.-Mexico border. The violation of our borders has been allowed to happen and even facilitated by the Biden administration for nearly a year. Since Joe Biden took office, over 1.7 million illegal immigrants have been apprehended at the southern border. What's worse, Joe is flying these individuals deeper into our nation with a ticket you paid for. Because of President Biden's failed open border policies, more drugs have been smuggled into our neighborhoods than ever before. CBP estimates that nearly 1,200 pounds of fentanyl was apprehended last year alone, doubling from the prior year. Fentanyl flowing through Joe's open border has caused unthinkable harm by poisoning our communities and killing our children. The Biden administration's failure has had costly consequences. Cartels are profiting while Americans are paying with their tax dollars, safety, and lives. Border security is national security. It's time to stop risking the safety of innocents for the sake of politics. This crisis has gone on long enough. Americans deserve better, they deserve the closed border, and they deserve to be safe. Madam Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
Request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to discuss an important issue in Alabama and across the nation. Chronic wasting disease is a neurological disease that affects deer, moose, elk, and is 100% fatal. Unfortunately, there is no known cure. CWD could absolutely devastate the deer hunting population in Alabama and the revenue it brings in each year. I'm a proud co-sponsor of H.R. 5608, the Chronic Wasting Disease Research and Management Act, which passed the House of Representatives last month. This bill will help research and prevent chronic wasting disease from spreading further, protecting Alabama's deer herds, outdoor economy, and its traditions. Last week, the first case of CWD was reported in Alabama. While it is currently only one case, it is important that we do what we can to prevent this terrible disease from spreading even further. I'm hopeful the Senate will answer the call and take up the legislation so important to Alabama and our nation. I'll do whatever I can in Washington to help prevent CWD from taking hold in Alabama. And with that, I'll yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, by direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 860 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 61, House Resolution 860. Resolved that upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill, H.R. 1836, to amend Title 38, United States Code, to ensure that the timing during which members of armed forces serve on active duty for training qualifies for educational assistance under the Post-9/11 Educational Assistance Program of the Department of Veterans Affairs and for other purposes. in the nature of a substitute, recommended by the Committee on Veterans Affairs, now printed in the bill. An amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 117-25 shall be considered as adopted. The bill as amended shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill as amended and on any further amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one. 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Veterans Affairs or the respective designees. 2, the further amendments described in Section 2 of this resolution. And 3, one motion to recommit. Section 2, after debate, pursuant to the first section of this resolution, each further amendment printed in Part A of the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution shall be considered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, may be withdrawn by the proponent at any time before the question is put thereon, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. All points of order against the further amendments printed in Part A of the report of the Committee on Rules are waived. Section 3. Upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill, H.R. 4673, to amend Title 38 United States Code, to provide for the automatic enrollment of eligible veterans in patient enrollment systems of the Department of Veterans Affairs and for other purposes. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. An amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 117-26 shall be considered as adopted. The bill as amended shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill as amended and on any further amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one. 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Veterans Affairs or their respective designees. 2, the further amendments described in Section 4 of this resolution. 3, the amendments en bloc described in Section 5 of this resolution. And 4, one motion to recommit. Section 4, after debate, pursuant to Section 3 of this resolution, each further amendment printed in Part B of the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution, not earlier considered as part of amendments en bloc pursuant to Section 5 of this resolution, shall be considered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, may be withdrawn by the proponent at any time before the question is put thereon, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. Section 5, it shall be in order at any time after debate pursuant to Section 3 of this resolution for the chair of the Committee on Veterans Affairs or his designee to offer amendments en bloc consisting of further amendments printed in Part B of the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution, not earlier disposed of. Amendments en bloc offered pursuant to this section shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for 20 minutes, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Veterans Affairs or their respective designees, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. Section 6, all points of order against the further amendments printed in Part B of the report of the Committee on Rules or amendments en bloc described in Section 5 of this resolution are waived. Section 7, House Resolution 188, agreed to March 8, 2021, as recently amended by House Resolution 829, agreed to December 2, 2021, is amended by striking January 21, 2022, each place it appears and inserting, in each instance, February 4, 2022.
The gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. For purposes of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to my friend, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Reschenthaler, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume. And during consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for purposes of debate only, and I ask unanimous consent that all members be given 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, yesterday the Rules Committee met and reported a rule, House Resolution 860. The rule provides for consideration of H.R. 1836, the Guard and Reserve GI Bill Parity Act, under a structured rule. The rule provides 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Veterans Affairs, makes in order 2 amendments, and provides 1 motion to recommit. The rule provides for consideration of H.R. 4673, the E-Vest Act, under a structured rule. The rule provides 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking member of the Committee on Veterans Affairs. The rule also makes in order 5 amendments, provides the chairman of the Committee on Veterans Affairs with en bloc authority, and provides 1 motion to recommit. And finally, the rule provides for recess instructions, suspension authority, and same-day authority through February 4th, 2022. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased we're here today to provide for consideration of 2 important bills to support our nation's veterans. H.R. 1836, the Guard and Reserve GI Bill Parity Act, will make important improvements to the way GI Bill benefits are calculated for our National Guard and Reserve veterans. Since 9/11, our 7 individual Reserve and Guard components of the United States Armed Forces have played a larger and larger role in military operations. Despite putting on the same uniform and taking on many of the same risks as their active duty counterparts, these service members don't have access to the same benefits. Under current law, active component service members receive credit for every day they serve, while Reserve component and National Guard service members earn credit depending on their duty status. H.R. 1836 would expand eligibility for the GI Bill to count every day a service member is paid and in uniform toward benefit eligibility, and ensure parity for National Guard and Reserve members. It only makes common sense. This service would include all training and general duty for which basic pay is warranted. These men and women answer the call to serve without hesitation. Our National Guard has stepped up these last several years to assist in the fight against COVID-19, help communities affected by natural disasters. As Colorado, we had a terrible wildfire a week ago, and the National Guard stepped up, and even protecting our capital following a domestic terrorist attack. It's past time these service members have access to the GI benefits they deserve. I commend Congressman Mike Levin for sponsoring this legislation to provide parity, and I'm proud to support this bipartisan bill. The rule also provides for consideration of H.R. 4673, the E-Vest Act, to improve health care benefits for departing active duty service members as they transition into VA health care and civilian life. Again, something that is just common sense and I thought was already part of the law. Approximately 200,000 service members transition out of military service each year. This service is difficult, demanding, and dangerous, and the transition from military to civilian life can be challenging for service members who suffered a service-related injury or a traumatic experience. A recent survey of 10,000 veterans showed their concern mental health care, and for each year a veteran waited to initiate treatment, there was a 5% increase in the odds of their PTSD not improving or even worsening. Simply put, our veterans cannot afford to not get the health care they need and deserve. The E-Vest Act requires the VA to enroll veterans in its patient enrollment system within 60 days of receiving relevant information and notice from the Department of Defense. This bill uses existing DoD systems through the Transition Assistance Program, as well as the VA's existing patient enrollment system, to enable a warm handoff, an immediate handoff, from DoD to VA. The bill would require the VA to provide veterans notice of enrollment and instructions for how the veteran can opt out if they so wish. Smoother access to VA health care has never been more important than it is today. It's time to shift the burden from the veteran to the DoD. Stress on teachers, but the schools are open. Now,
country failed Rachel and her mom and her family and all of the families across this country. And now we thought we had at one point enough attention on the issue of opioids, on the issue of heroin, now on the issue of fentanyl. And then the pandemic came, and this issue has been on the back burner. And my remarks here today on the floor of the United States House of Representatives, one of the greatest deliberative bodies in the entire world, is to try to bring attention to this issue, to try to scream from the rafters so that we don't have any more Rachels. We don't have any more families that have to experience the heartache, the tragedy, the gut-wrenching experiences that so many families have had to have over the past few years. And this is something that we can do. 80% of the overdoses in Ohio, think about this, 80% of the overdoses in Ohio are from fentanyl. The fentanyl starts in China, it goes to Mexico to get processed, and then it comes over the border. And so as a country, we have to focus, and I will give the Biden administration a credit. We have seen progress in this regard. We have seen progress. We have seen a decrease or an increase in people getting busted at the border, which is appropriate. But we have a long, long way to go. We need an awareness campaign across the country so that young kids who otherwise would make a simple mistake and now it ends their life, that they know, that their peers know, that their schools know. There's not a corner of Ohio, Madam Speaker, there's not a corner of Ohio that I can't go to where I won't meet families who have experienced this kind of tragedy. And it's incumbent upon us, and as one of the co-chairs of the Addiction Treatment and Recovery Caucus, we've been dealing with this in a bipartisan way. We passed the Comprehensive Addiction Recovery Act, the CARA Act, in a bipartisan way. We know that there are so many issues we can fight about. There's so many issues we can argue about here in this body. But I hope and pray that one of them isn't the issue that we need to address collectively here in the United States Congress. And so we need to, I think, begin by going back to the opiate issue, going back to the Sackler family, going back to all the profits that were made off of getting so many millions of Americans hooked on opiates, hooked on painkillers. And you merge that in with a broken economy where there's so much hopelessness in so many quarters in the United States, where so many communities have been disinvested in, deindustrialized, left to rot. And then you have families that are knowingly increasing the amount of opiates, playing with the FDA, going through the loopholes, which is what the Sackler family has done, and they need to be punished to the point where they don't get the deal that they want. Madam Speaker, they don't get the deal that they want, because that's how it's been in the United States. If you're a wealthy corporation, you can get away with just about anything. If you're a rich person in the United States, it almost doesn't matter what crime you commit. You're going to get away with it. But meanwhile, in Youngstown, Ohio, or Steubenville, Ohio, or Portsmouth, Ohio, or Akron, Ohio, it trickles down. And it's been those communities who have suffered greatly. Dayton, Ohio, because of this epidemic. And over the holidays, my wife and I were able to watch an amazing documentary on Hulu called Dope Sick, with Michael Keaton, Rosario Dawson, and others that went through the Sackler family approach to painkillers. And it went through, set in Virginia, but Michael Keaton from Western PA, graduate of Kent State in Ohio, they were highlighting Virginia, but this is an issue everywhere, where these good and honest and decent people found themselves getting hooked because of the wealth and profits that one family wanted to earn on the backs of the American people. And so here we are today. We need to make sure that the Sackler families of the world are punished and put out of business, quite frankly. And we need to also make sure that we begin to take the bold steps we need to take to make sure that the Rachels and the other kids and the other people across this country, to the tune of 100,000 deaths last year because of fentanyl. So I believe we need to take a firmer stance. And while I support what the Biden administration has done, we need to go a hell of a lot further. I believe we need to start having a conversation in this country, knowing that China knows that they're sending fentanyl to Mexico that makes its way in the United States, that they need to be punished with tariffs. They need to be punished. They're killing our kids. This is killing our kids. We can't just stand around. We need to take the money from the tariffs, support our border, support the cops who are on the beat in these different communities. We need to put that money towards addiction treatment to make sure everybody can get better if they've got some issue. And we need to grow the economy in these communities. But we can't just stand by and hope this problem goes away, because it's not. It will get worse. And there will be more families, more destruction, more hopelessness, more ruined lives. And as we're trying to compete against China economically, we need to make sure that Rachel and these other young, bright minds are on the economic field playing for the United States of America. That's what this is all about. And so we've got to have a whole-of-government approach. We have a whole-of-government approach when it comes to the pandemic, right? The only way you can have any success is when you have a whole-of-government approach. And this means federal, state, and local coordination. This means coordination with nonprofits, and this means coordination with law enforcement. This means coordination with the Border Patrol. This is about us all coming together, and you can't tell me we don't have the imagination in the United States to figure this out. This is about making it a priority. And so what I'm doing here tonight, and what many activists across the country are doing, are trying to get this back on the front burner. Because other than a few articles in the paper, it's been on the back burner. And we need to make sure we increase the resources necessary to keep this garbage out of our country, or to know who has it the second they bring it in here. And we've got to make sure all our kids are aware that this could be put in cocaine or meth or something else. And that if you have an issue with drugs, that you can actually get the treatment that you need. And that no one's priced out of the market, so that they can get better and get healthy and become self-sufficient and become good citizens and members of society, and off to the races we go to try to outcompete China, because we care about our citizens. That's what this is all about. And so you're going to be hearing a lot from me in the coming weeks and months, where we are building a coalition of the families around Ohio and across the country who want to begin to move this issue forward. And I do want to take a minute or two to talk about the power of fentanyl. And I mentioned the carfentanil. But 1 kilogram of fentanyl, 1 kilogram, has the potential to kill 500,000 people. The money that's being made off of this substance will blow your mind, which is why it continues to come over the border from China, from Mexico. And much of the fentanyl comes through the southern border that's being looked at by the cartels. A lot of the China-sourced fentanyl comes through the international mail, and some comes from China through Canada. As I said, fentanyl is responsible for 80% of Ohio's overdose deaths. Roughly 79% of meth, cocaine, psychostimulant overdose deaths in Ohio were from supplies contaminated with fentanyl. The pervasiveness of fentanyl contaminating other drugs has made overall fatality rates for all drugs much higher than before. And we're seeing it across the board. And we have the Stop Fentanyl Act. We have legislation with Annie Custer and others. There's a Manchin-Portman bill in the Senate which permanently makes fentanyl-related substances a Schedule I controlled substance. This is something that we have to address, and we have to address it in a bipartisan manner. And I would just like to say, lastly, Madam Speaker, that there is nothing more inspiring than someone who has been through the ultimate tragedy, which is having to put one of your own kids to rest. There's no greater heartbreak. There's nothing worse that could happen to a parent. And so I'm pledging, and I know other members are pledging, to keep up the fight. Because, as some of these parents have told me, there's nothing left to lose for them. And there's nothing more inspiring than someone who has had their heart ripped out of their body, who live with the pain every day, who wake up in the middle of the night and open their eyes and hope it was a nightmare. Open their eyes in the morning and hope it didn't really happen, that they could walk down the hall and their kid would still be laying in their bed. And these giants, these parents, are taking their pain, they're taking their experience, they're taking their heartache, and they're saying, we got to fight. We can't let this happen to another parent, to another brother or sister, to another family member. And so people like Cindy started Rachel's Angels, which is a group back in Akron, Ohio. And there are so many groups across the country that have sprung up because of these tragedies. And we want to unite these groups, and we want to take the fight to the American people, to Congress, here in the House and in the Senate, and get the resources we need to make sure that these overdose deaths stop, that the companies producing these kind of drugs get punished, that the people peddling this stuff get punished, and that we get the resources we need to keep this garbage out of our country. And so while this may be the first time this year that I stand up and speak on behalf it will not be the last. And we're encouraging everybody, Madam Speaker, to reach out to their members of Congress, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, and let's get this issue of fentanyl deaths back on the front burner of the agenda here in the United States Congress. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Okay. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 4th, 2021, the Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Tenney, for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and submit extraneous materials.
Without objection, the gentlewoman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And today is a very special day. I want to thank my good friend and colleague, Congressman Burgess Owens. Burgess Owens and I are leading the charge here in Congress to tell the courageous stories of America's abolitionist heroes, particularly those from upstate New York. It was an honor for me to welcome recently in October Burgess to upstate New York to tour our region's sacred abolitionist sites, including the Garrett Smith Estate, a state National Historic Landmark, and the National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum in Peterborough, as well as the home of abolitionist, suffragette, and true American heroine, Harriet Tubman. Opposite me, there's a photo here of Garrett Smith. This is a picture of Garrett Smith from Peterborough. Peterborough is named after his father, a guy named Peter Smith. And just wanted to tell a little bit about how this all happened in Peterborough, New York, which I'm sure a lot of people don't know the history. And it was all kind of started that there was an abolitionist named Reverend Harry Highland, told his good friend Frederick Douglass when describing Peterborough, New York, which I'm, by the way, honored to represent here in Congress. And many people don't even realize this little hamlet of Peterborough up in bucolic Madison County, happens to be my mother's home county, played a vitally important role during the abolitionist movement. And this was in large part due to one of its most famous residents, Garrett Smith. And as I said, the little hamlet of Peterborough was named in honor of his father. Mr. Smith was a successful businessman and a committed philanthropist. He previously served this body, actually, as a representative of New York's 22nd Congressional District, the same district that I currently represent. He was also a 3-time presidential candidate. Garrett Smith always opposed slavery, but he firmly joined the political cause of abolitionism in 1835. He was at a meeting of about 600 abolitionists in a church in nearby Utica, in the city of Utica, which is in Oneida County. Upon learning of the meeting, a violent mob stormed the church and disrupted the proceedings, forcing the abolitionists to flee. Smith realized then that he could put his wealth and property to use. He invited the abolitionists to his home in Peterborough, and a year later, he was elected president of the New York State Anti-Slavery Society. The rest, as you say, is history, and we're going to tell you a little bit about that today with Congressman Owens. In Smith's view, slavery was completely incompatible not only with our founding documents, but also with the natural laws of God. We were born free, and no law or institution could take away another man or woman's innate right to freedom. From 1835 until his death in 1874, Garrett Smith dedicated his whole heart to the abolitionist cause, and Peterborough was his base of operation. Giants like Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, William Lloyd Garrison, Elizabeth Cady, eventually Stanton, whose husband, Henry Stanton, was actually a cousin of Smith's, spent considerable time there strategizing and mobilizing the support. Garrett Smith played a key role in funding abolitionist causes across our country. Smith maintained a lifelong friendship with Frederick Douglass and provided funding and other support to the North Star, which was Douglass's abolitionist newspaper. In today's terms, Garrett Smith would be considered a billionaire, and he gave what then was $100 a month to Frederick Douglass's cause to pay for his newspaper, which in today's dollars with inflation would be about $7,000 per month to make sure that this newspaper was able to continue to thrive and flourish and inform people. In a letter from Douglas following Smith's death in 1874, Douglas credited Smith's generous support as the financial engine that kept his abolitionist movement going. Smith's estate in Peterborough was also a stop along the Underground Railroad. As enslaved people made their way north to Canada, Smith would offer them shelter, food, and support. Exact numbers are hard to come by, but it is safe to say Smith bought and helped secure the freedom of hundreds of enslaved people from around the country. This is why Reverend Henry Highland said, "There are two places where slaveholders cannot come, heaven and Peterborough." Peterborough was synonymous with freedom. Just a short drive from Gerrit Smith's estate in upstate New York is the home of another titan of the abolitionist movement, the great Harriet Tubman. Like Congressman Owens, this was my first visit to Harriet Tubman's home in Auburn. Just want to show you a little picture of Mighty Mite Harriet Tubman, who is an amazing figure, and just a photo. I may have to go back to some of these. This is a great photo of Congressman Owens and I at Harriet Tubman's home in Auburn, New York, where we were able to tour and see where she lived and where she operated her Underground Railroad right in our own communities. This was an amazing experience. I was in awe of Harriet Tubman, her accomplishments and her tenacity. She had every reason to be in despair. She was strong, she was compassionate, she was generous, and she was only 4'11", which is amazing. The home we visited, where Harriet spent her later years after she escaped slavery in Maryland, served as a conductor of the Underground Railroad, and then a scout, spy, and a nurse for the Union Army during the Civil War. Harriet lived for almost a century. She was about 91, almost 92 years old. She was an indomitable force. She was the first black woman to lead a combat assault, organizing about 150 black Union troops on a raid in South Carolina. She later freed 750 enslaved people as part of that operation. She suffered from narcolepsy her adult life after being hit by a metal weight when she was a teenager. Despite this, she persevered. She brought at least 70 slaves to freedom on the Underground Railroad and never lost a single passenger. At her core, Harriet was a woman of compassion. In her later years, she helped so many who came through her home in Auburn, providing them shelter, medical attention, and love. Despite the obstacles she faced, Harriet Tubman never gave up, nor was she ever consumed by anger or cynicism. She led with integrity and was incredibly resilient, and she's certainly an amazing role model for all of us. It was important to tell Gerrit Smith's story and Harriet Tubman's stories, and now more than ever, we must understand our shared history and learn from those who came before us. Our great nation was founded on the promise that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. No other republic before ours guaranteed such rights to its citizens. In fact, before America, there were no citizens at all, only subjects. Yet in the earliest days of our nation's founding, it is clear we failed to live up to our ideals. We failed to end the slave trade or to free those who were tied down in bondage. While this grave mistake will forever be part of our history, so too will be the courageous stories of Gerrit Smith, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, and so many more Americans of different races, creeds, and religions who fought for a better America. Gerrit Smith and Harriet Tubman personify the spirit of America, and their story should be a lesson to all of us. Their tenacity, their relentlessness, and their pursuit of ideals are everything that we strive to be as Americans. As Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas recently said, while we as Americans have failed to live up to the ideals of the Declaration of Independence time and again, there is no time in our history when those ideals, the ideals themselves, have actually failed us. The Declaration and its principles endure because they articulate a fundamental truth, that all people are born free and equal. Like Gerrit and Harriet did as citizens of this country, we must commit ourselves to the great American project of making sure we live up to our ideals. These ideals are sacred. And the abolitionists who gathered in Peterborough changed the world, and they were the authors of our future. And we must thank God that we have the freedom to fight every day to strengthen our institutions and make this a much more perfect union. I want to end by thanking those who made our recent trip and welcomed Congressman Owens and I to this cold day in October before I introduce him. But I just want to say a couple, just to recognize these great people who spend and devote their life to this history. First is Norman Dan. He was one of our tour guides at Peterborough and the author of Practical Dreamer, Garrett Smith, and the Crusade for Social Reform. Alden Max Smith, another one of our guides, as well as a cabinet member of the National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum, which is also in Peterborough. Dorothy Wilsey, another fantastic tour guide and president of the National Abolition Hall of Fame. John Becker, chairman of the Madison County Board of Supervisors, for meeting us there and also for making this all possible. Cliff Moses, vice chairman of the Madison County Board of Supervisors. Mary Kavanaugh, City of Oneida Wards 1, 2, 3 supervisor, who also greeted us there and toured with us. Yvonne Nervelli, the former Town of Lincoln supervisor, who also greeted us and toured with us. Matt Roberts, City of Oneida supervisor for Wards 1, 2, and 3, another person who came to tour with us and was fascinated again by this amazing little hamlet up in upstate New York. Matthew Ertz, our Madison County historian, who is completely intrigued and so excited to welcome Burgess Owens, the great Burgess Owens, who's going to be talking a little more on this today. Carol Kuzinski, trustee at the National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum, and Nell Ziegler, the president of the Smithfield Community Association and owner and manager of the Garrett Smith Estate National Historic Landmark. And I just want to say, for more information about the Garrett Smith Estate and the beautiful hamlet of Peterborough, I encourage you to visit www.garrett, G-E-R-R-I-T-S-M-I-T-H, garrettsmith.org. And I also want to thank Karen Hill, President and CEO of the Harriet Tubman Home, as well as our fantastic tour guides who shared their knowledge and passion with us again on this beautiful cold day. But there it is again, our tour of Peterborough. Really wonderful to have Burgess Owens there, a really special moment for all of us. And now I want to say it's with great honor and thankfully we're finally getting to this great day to introduce my colleague and great representative, Burgess Owens, who I think this was a great experience for him. I think he never realized what existed up in upstate New York. And that's why we want everyone in the world to know just how important it is that we learn our history and we celebrate everyone who had a path and who had courage and who had the tenacity and the boldness to stand up for what was right against the grain at a very difficult time in our country. And I would just like, again, to introduce and welcome to my special orders the great Burgess Owens representing the state of Utah. Mr. Owens. Thank you so much. Oh, I have one little thing for you, too. I have a special Harriet Tubman pad for you that I grabbed. Thank you.
Thank you again, Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. I really appreciate this. A couple months ago, as Claudia mentioned, my good friend from New York's 22nd District was inviting me for a tour of two of upstate New York's historic sites impacted by Harriet Tubman. Harriet was one of my heroes since I was 12 years old in the 7th grade. This was my first visit to Peterborough. What a remarkable experience it was to see firsthand the property of my longtime hero, someone who once was the property of someone else. I encourage everyone who visits the Northeast to make this stop as part of your trip. I want to again thank my good friend for her invitation and for sharing this time as we discuss courageous Americans who understood the blessings of freedom. I rise today in honor of the extraordinary life and unmatched legacy of Harriet Tubman, one of the most notable abolitionists in America's history. As many of you know, Harriet escaped the horrors of slavery and through her work during the abolitionary movement, overcame unspeakable odds to secure the dreams of future generations. My great-great-grandfather, Silas Burgess, came to America shackled in the belly of a slave ship. He was sold in an auction block in Charleston, South Carolina to the Burgess plantation. In his youth, he escaped to West Texas along the southwestern route of the Underground Railroad. He later became a successful entrepreneur, starting the first black church, the first black elementary in his town, and purchased 102 acres of farmland that he paid off in 2 years. There are thousands upon thousands of untold stories of slavery to success, all due to courageous conductors like Harriet Tubman. The true miracle of the Underground Railroad, though, is something that most of us missed. It was a total trust and faith between conductors like Harriet and the facilitators of the Freedom Railroad. Whether it was south to north or south to west, as with my great-great-grandfather, white Christian Americans took the grave risk of reprisal from the prevalent KKK in their communities as they opened up their barns, cellars, food pantries to create a safe and secret route to freedom for over 100,000 slaves prior to Civil War. I've been inspired by the story of the American heart since I was 12 years old, growing up in my proud Southern segregated community. Born enslaved in Maryland in 1822, Harriet spent her childhood as a nurse, maid, field hand, cook, and woodcutter. When Harriet was 12, it was reported that she refused to help an overseer punish another slave, resulting in a severe injury when a 2-pound iron weight was thrown at her head. This caused her to suffer seizures and bouts of uncontrollable narcolepsy throughout her life. She married John Tubman, a free black man, in 1844. After rumors spread that Harriet was about to be sold, she fled to Philadelphia, then to Baltimore after returning to rescue her parents, sister, and 2 children. Over the next decade, she led dozens of these trips, rescuing more than 70 slaves along the Underground Railroad. As the railroad's most famous conductor, it was said that she never lost a passenger. In 1858, Harriet bought a small farm in upstate New York, where her family resided, later to be named the Harriet Tubman Home. During the Civil War, she served Union forces as a scout, spy, nurse, cook, recruiter, and laundress. Under the command of Union Colonel James Montgomery, Harriet became the first woman to lead a major military operation in the United States, where she and 150 African-American Union soldiers rescued about 700 slaves in the Combahee Ferry raid. After the Civil War, Harriet opened her home to serve orphans and the elderly. She joined Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony in their quest for women's suffrage. She believed in equal rights for everyone and lived a life of courage, serving others until around the age of 92. I often say that the Black American history is so rich because of the heroes who have come before us, heroes like Harriet Tubman, Garrett Smith, Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, Lucretia Mott, and so many others who recognized injustice, strove to help their brothers and sisters, and dreamed of a world outside the chains of slavery. Each focused on spreading the pockets of freedom that will soon spread throughout our country. It was a movement that has inspired untold millions around the world. Indeed, we all stand on the shoulders of these great people who came before us, but the Black community, particularly my proud race, holds our ancestors especially dear. They fought hate, overcame the horrors of slavery, and on their backs built a world in which we can own and build homes and businesses, get an education, worship our faith, vote, run for office, and stand in the House of Representatives honoring the legacy of one of our most notable abolitionists in American history. What a difference men and women pursuing their dreams in a free country can make. It is our responsibility to never forget or allow history to be erased as to what we, the people, have done together over our 240-year history. This as we continue to resolve to grow together as a more perfect union. I have just a few thoughts I wanted to leave with you before I invite Congressman Tenney to come back up. And that is a little bit of the highlights of the great hearts of our American people. It is our nation's mission statement that ends with the idea that we can have not only second chances, but as a imperfect union, that we could become more of a perfect union. I start with my great-great-grandfather, Silas Burgess. To show what the more perfect union looks like is the fact that he came to this country in the belly of a slave ship, lived through the evils of a plantation, and yet escaped going west because of good Americans, German and Mexican Americans, who opened up their homes and their barns and their fields to give him an opportunity to move forward and keep his hopes alive. Even though he saw the evils of being a slave, he saw the good hearts of these good Americans that led him to become a Christian, led him to be able to forgive, to build, and to serve instead of destroying. I see the form of a more perfect union with my dad in the 50s, who came back from World War II, could not get his postgraduate degree in Texas because of Jim Crow laws. was able to go to go to Ohio State, and some white administrator, who I'll never know who that was, said yes, gave an opportunity to get his PhD, and again, to help form a more perfect union. I experienced myself in the 60s, where going to the University of Miami was the fourth black to get a scholarship in a school, the most southern school down the South, that at that time had a commitment, the president, Henry Stanford, to end segregation and allow us to move forward based on the character of our character versus color of our skin. I saw a more perfect union in the 70s when a Jewish owner of the Raiders, Al Davis, committed to ending the Jim Crow barriers of the NFL and put meritocracy above color. And then we had the first Hispanic quarterback, the first Hispanic coach, the first black coach, the first female CEO, because meritocracy has no color. What we see in our country, and we have to continue to remember, is the power of we the people, the power of the team. We think about Harriet Tubman as a conductor, Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Martin Luther King, all conductors. We have many conductors today throughout our country. At the same time, we have many more people who build our freedom highways and railroads. We the people roll up our sleeves, gives hope to others. We need to rediscover our history, remember the havens of Peterborough, places where Americans across this country, regardless of skin color, came together to allow others to have an opportunity to see what freedom was all about. We can see those experiences in Booker T. Washington and Tuskegee in the early 1900s. We can see that experiment succeed in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the early 1900s at Black Wall Street, and we can see it today throughout our country. We see it here in this house. What we must remember is our past should give us hope for a much greater future. And we also must remember to not only sprint away from anyone who leaves us hopeless. With that, I want to make sure, Congresswoman, if you have any other comments you want to make.
Well, thank you so much for those great words and for bringing up so many people. And again, our community was so honored to have you there. And just to have you at Peterborough and to have more people discover and have this audience around our country and the world watching know that there are great people out there that did care about the cause of freedom. And you brought up Martin Luther King, and I always remember studying him when I was a college student and just discovering his great relationship with Gandhi and talking about peace and peaceful protest and how important it was and how that's a founding principle of our country. And just to have you there in Peterborough meant so much, and that everyone in Peterborough was so excited to have you there, that people are recognizing that there are people that maybe it's not on everyone's radar and the national radar, but there are people that have done great things, that are doing it quietly, but they're doing it for a great cause. And those little acts, like you just mentioned, the administrator that let your dad into Ohio State, you'll never know who it was, but that person enabled us to have the great Burgess Owens here today. So,
if I can add to that, because I think the most important thing about our nation is to remember our history, to really understand that we have within our hearts, because of our foundation, this desire to want others to succeed. We want to feel good that we've been part of something that makes a difference. And it's not just the 2000s, it's actually throughout our country's history. And to know what happened again from my great-grandfather, throughout our history again, we can find those moments in which we've helped each other, we've all given some credence, something given back to this country. The more we know about that, the more we feel better about who we are today and the vision we have, our vision for the future. So we have to make sure we keep that in mind for sure.
I agree. I think we have to focus on the people who are helping us, not the people who aren't. And I think that this is what we wanted to do today, and we're grateful to you to be able to focus on people who actually help, not the people tearing us down, the people trying to bring our country to its knees, but people trying to make us rise up and be better and be a better America than we are today. And that's our striving for our future. That's what we want our children to be. We want America to be better for our children and grandchildren. And I think by recognizing that there were great people in our past who have done amazing things, who never got the recognition, but often those people don't go, they go unnoticed. And I think that's why it meant so much for us to have you there. And I urge anyone, if you want to come up on a beautiful fall day, or you can come in the warm summer days, it's nice, a little warmer, it's a little snowy right now, to come to visit Peterborough and meet with some of our great docents who I mentioned in my remarks who are studying and uncovering documents and trying to show the true history, and so we understand it and so we can learn from it. And it wasn't, even though I'd been to Peterborough when I was younger, I knew about it when I was a kid because it was my mom's home county, I never knew the depth of it, or I learned so much more just by that experience. And I'm sure if I go again to the Abolitionist Hall of Fame and go to I think we'll learn even more there. But just learning about Harriet Tubman and going to her house and being in the same room where that she was providing so much aid and comfort and love to people she didn't know, but people she believed in and knew needed to understand and feel that taste of freedom. Just standing there with you and just the people that work there and how much it meant to them, they conveyed that sort of, that wonderful feeling to us as well. So I feel like I just would love to have everyone come and have that experience, and anywhere else in the country, we'd love to encourage our colleagues to come out and tell us about great experiences and great Americans that are out there that might not get the recognition. They might not be getting the clicks on Twitter or Facebook or social media, but they're people out there doing great works and uncovering great heroism.
If I can add a little bit about Petersburg, because this was, again, a new experience for me. And what that particular place represented for so many Americans, particularly Black Americans, was a place of hope. They knew that once they got to Petersburg, they were literally very close to Canada, which was their really freedom. That was it. They could then know they weren't going to be hiding and going through all the stealth and knowing they would be recaptured. So that hope is a big factor that we're talking about. And I hope that those that are listening to our conversation know that actually our country is built on that. What we've done so far today is talk about what our country is capable of, because we've done in the past. And the more hope we can give to our fellow Americans that this is a country, the best in the history of mankind, that we can serve each other, that we can build, not destroy, and that we can become a much better country, because that's actually within our mission statement, to be a more perfect union. And we can do that. And that's what we've done, again, very, very successfully. And I'm just very excited to have this opportunity to spend this time with you. It was a great opportunity. Can't wait to get back. If I can say, for anyone who's listening, please check this place out. Harriet Tubman was, as always, for many of us, we know she's a hero. Go to a place to see her property, a person that once was the property of someone else. Her property and what she did and what she gave away to so many because she just loved the process of service. It is a great experience, and I can't wait to get back and check it out again.
Yeah, no, we can't wait to have you back. And also, I just think about that last moment we were in Garrett Smith's estate in the barn. We went back in the barn and we saw, these conditions where horses and mules were put, and that they actually had to hide people in there. And we came out of the barn and there was this gleaming sunlight on us on that cold day. And I looked above and there was a sign that said, Heaven and Peterborough, the two places where the slaves were safe and symbolized freedom. So it's just an honor for me to represent the community, and then to have you standing there with that gleaming sunlight on us, and knowing that so many people in our past that was their gateway to freedom and their gateway to finding a new life. I think it's just an amazing experience, and we hope maybe you can come again and we can invite our colleagues and others to come and experience Peterborough.
I would love to.
And Harriet Tubman's home, of course.
If I can just leave one message, one last final word to those who are watching. This country is a place that thrives because people can vision themselves doing much, much better. And we do that when we, the people, get together and we really put our hearts and soul into making sure our next generation is a much better place than our time is. And we do that better than any other country. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to visit a home of my hero since I was 12 years old. And that was kind of exciting to hear that you were that close to that area and that had the invitation to come up and see it. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you. And this is what a great discovery it was, just sitting on the floor of the House chamber that Burgess and I said, you've never been to Peterborough? How about this? Who would think that I would be hosting a famous person like Burgess Owens, a hero in our communities, in my own little community, and that we would have that common bond with Harriet Tubman. But we're grateful. We're just grateful for you and your service and everyone here, and just hope that my colleagues and anyone who wants to join Peterborough, again, I hate to do too much of a pitch, but if anyone really wants to go to Peterborough, go to www.gerrittsmith.org, GERRITSMITH.org. It's an amazing place. It's humble, but it's just majestic in the accomplishments that were made in that wonderful place. So thank you so much, Burgess, for joining us, and thank you for everything you've done, for standing courageously and boldly for our communities and for our country, and standing up for our Constitution, and freedom, because that is really what's going to unite us. Let's talk about what unites us, not what divides us. And we have a lot of great history that can really bring us together in the future. And so I thank you.
Thank you so much for the exactly the same. We have a remarkable freshman team. I'm so honored to be serving with you at this point. So let's keep this thing moving forward, for
Yeah,
sure.
thank you so much. The honor's all mine. Thank you.
All right, the gentlelady's time has expired. So pursuant to Section 11B of House Resolution 188, the House now stands adjourned until noon tomorrow.